playlist with Joss Whedon. On BBC Radio 1.
Hello, I'm Joss Whedon, writer-director of The Avengers.
It's called The Avengers Initiative. Guys,
I'm bringing the party to you.
Creator of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
I have everything under control.
Buffy, it makes sense to
have a nice time.
Director of the new Much Ado About Nothing movie and a plain-dealing villain. I'm taking over and probably ruining Radio 1 for the next hour with my playlist. So tonight, my playlist is all about playing things on a list, which means I'll be playing you songs from Jill Sobule, My Chemical Romance, and of course a few musicals. I'll also be answering questions, if you have any left for me, giving you some secrets from The Avengers and no secrets from The Avengers Part 2, and telling you about my new film, Much Ado About Nothing. But most importantly, I will be geeking out over some of my favorite music, like my first track, which is Trouble by Cat Stevens.
My playlist with Joss Whedon.
That was Cat Stevens. I'm Joss Whedon, and this is my playlist on Radio 1.
BBC Radio 1.
This is Joss Whedon. This is my playlist, but I cannot do this myself. I need some help. I want Phil from Dan and Phil. I don't want Dan. I just want Phil.
Hi, Joss.
How are you?
Very good, thanks. Can I just say I'm the biggest Buffy fan ever, so thank you for creating it.
No, you can't say that. Don't say that.
Why?
It's inappropriate.
Okay, I won't say that.
Feels weird.
I will tell you that I didn't have anyone to go with at my prom, so my parents photoshopped Sarah Michelle Gellar with me in the prom photograph.
That is a story that touches my heart.
Would you like to see it?
Yes, I really want to.
Okay, I'll get it for you now. Okay, here it is on my phone.
This is really the essence of radio, me looking at a photo. You make a very cute couple, and that's really good Photoshop, actually.
It is. My dad is good at it.
Wow.
People come to the house and think it's real and say, that's a pretty girl that Phil's with.
Yes.
It's not real.
Then they laugh and laugh.
Anyway, I have a couple of questions for you. If you had to swap one character from Buffy and one from the Avengers into each other's universes, who would you choose and why?
I think I'd stick Buffy into the Avengers.
She'd be useful.
Yes, I think she'd surprise them a lot. They could use a little shaking up.
Yeah.
And then I'd stick Hawkeye into the Buffyverse because they'd never stop making fun of him for being so quiet.
That'd be brilliant. I would like to watch that if it was real. Also, my favourite episode of Buffy is the musical episode. And I was wondering, if the Avengers were attacked by the musical demon, what songs would you give them to sing?
Oh, if they were attacked by Sweet, who was the musical demon, they would sing original songs. No jukebox musicals for me. It will never happen, but it wouldn't be terrible if it did. A lot of those actors can sing really well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think I'd enjoy the Hulk song.
Yes, well, it would be easiest to write. Or perhaps the hardest, because sometimes the fewest words are the hardest to choose.
Yeah. I was also wondering what it was like filming Much Ado About Nothing in your house. Were you like, oh, better not film over there in case it's a bit of a mess?
Well, we did clean the house before we filmed it. That's the kind of dedication to the arts that we have. Filming at the house was fine. I wanted to show it off. It's part of one of the things I loved about the movie was the chance to show the house that my wife had built. We did not obviously, film our underwear drawers or our children, or the number on the front of the house, which we digitally removed.
Okay. Were the actors wearing your clothes?
I do not have clothes that nice. I know that any professional actor who has to go to premieres or parties or anything will have a lovely suit or a summer dress.
Yes.
I only have the dresses.
Okay, so what I thought I'd do is jump in and hijack a little bit of your playlist and choose some of my own tracks as well, all relevant to Joss, of course. So, first of all, I think we're going to go with Vampire Weekend, because Buffy the Vampire Slayer liked slaying vampires, hopefully on the weekend. So here it is now on Radio 1.
My playlist with Joss Whedon. BBC Radio 1.
Hello, I'm Joss Whedon. I'm going to be playing you a bunch of songs on my playlist for the next hour. I started with Trouble by Cat Stevens. I think it's one of the most simple and beautiful and saddest songs. A little bit of an anthem for a man who likes to feel sorry for himself all the time, and that's me. I've compiled this playlist over torturous minutes. choosing songs that speak to me personally, or that I just really, really like. Music is a huge part of my life and my work. Obviously, there's music in my films. I also listen to the music of films constantly while I'm writing. And so I'm very well versed in movie scores, which I will not be playing you. I tend not to know what's going on with pop, but there are certain albums that I take with me and can listen to forever. I can use an album for about 6 years before I wear it out. Next up is Palm Springs from California Years by Jill Sobule. It's a song that anybody who's trying to write something should be able to relate to. I've been a fan of Jill Sobule for a lot of years. She wrote a song called I Kissed a Girl, not the one that Katy Perry recorded, but the one that's actually about someone who kissed a girl not to attract men.
My playlist with Joss Whedon on BBC Radio 1.
That was Palm Springs by Jill Sobule. I'm Joss Whedon, and this is my playlist on Radio 1.
My playlist with Joss Whedon.
BBC Radio 1.
For the many listeners out there who have no idea who I am, I created Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Firefly. I directed a couple of films, Serenity, The Avengers, or Avengers Assemble as it's called out here, and finally Much Ado About Nothing, which is just out. I've had an interesting and pretty successful and very bumpy career. I started out writing on shows and script doctoring movies. When I created my own television show, things changed a bit, and I got to do a lot of stuff that I wanted to do the way I wanted to do it. And then after that, sort of never looked back. And now, after Avengers, more than ever, I'm able to make things the way I want to, and make the things I want. Every time I make something, I think, maybe this will be the thing I'm remembered for. I think every artist thinks that. And the trick is always to be perfectly comfortable with that. I've done a lot of different things. That keeps me interested and hopefully makes me a better artist. But it also means that some people respond to one thing, some to another, and they all inform each other. And I would rather cover everything than be perfect at anything, partially because I never could be. I decided a long time ago that I needed to learn how to play the piano, and I can bang out about 5 chords. I am the world's worst piano student. I also learned a little bit of guitar when I was writing a musical episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but I am genuinely bad at both instruments. One of the things I love is when one genre of music pays homage to and sort of mashes up with another. In Mama by My Chemical Romance, they're clearly paying homage to the sort of Weimar sound of Kurt Weill, and they even have Liza Minnelli, the star of Cabaret, guesting in it. And here it is. That was My Chemical Romance on Radio 1.
This summer is alive with music. The BBC at Glastonbury. Come with us to the greatest music festival in the world.
Yes, Glastonbury, thank you all very much.
Where this year you'll be able to explore more than ever before.
We'll bring you all your favourite artists, plus some very special live DJ sets by night.
Good evening, everybody.
Keep listening to find out more.
This is one of the best festivals in the world.
The BBC at Glastonbury
on 1Extra and BBC Radio 1.
My playlist with Joss Whedon on BBC Radio 1.
So alongside Joss Whedon on my playlist tonight, you've got me, Phil, from Dan and Phil. And I'm a big fan of Joss Whedon. I actually fangirled a lot when I met him. I jumped up and down and asked him to sign my comic, which was a big moment in my life because I'm the biggest Buffy fan of all time. As you can hear by the tone of my voice now, it was amazing. And he smelled really good as well. Anyway, something you may not know about Joss Whedon, though, is he co-wrote Toy Story. So if it wasn't for him, there would be no Buzz Lightyear or Woody or Mr. Potato Head or those little Pizza Planet aliens that went, "The Claw."
Greetings, I am Buzz Lightyear.
It's the Disney film that fills me with the most nostalgic feelings, so let's dive headfirst into that nostalgia with You've Got a Friend in Me from the opening scene of Toy Story on Radio 1. That's You've Got a Friend in Me from Toy Story by Randy Newman on Radio 1. You're listening to Joss Whedon's playlist.
BBC Radio 1.
So I do have a film out in theaters right now and in incredible urge to talk about it. Much Ado About Nothing is obviously an original concept of my own. It is, of course, based on a 400-year-old play that I love very much. It's Shakespeare's text in a modern setting, played by some of my favorite actors, and it represented the kind of creative freedom and chance-taking that Hollywood frowns upon, but you can do if you don't tell them you're doing it. We made the film in 12 days and in complete secret, and it is truly a labor of love, and hopefully other people will love it too. A lot of people hear Shakespeare film and think, oh good, homework I have to pay for. But Much Ado About Nothing, which is the story of two pairs of lovers, one brought together, one torn apart by a lot of lies, manipulation, and hilarious tricks, is actually very accessible and very funny, and very contemporary. The things it has to say about love are things we need to hear now, and how we behave and how ridiculous we are when we are in love or when we are told that we are in love. It's got a lot of charm, but a lot of depth to it, and making the film, for me, was partially an attempt to bring it back to people and take it away from the sort of stately pageantry of how high school kids think about Shakespeare and into the sort of casual intimacy of people who really live in the language and the characters and really just have the most fun possible. The film was shot exactly a month after I wrapped production on Avengers, which seems counterintuitive, but was in fact the best vacation I ever took. Avengers was fun, but quite arduous, and with all the effects and all the stunts and the long schedule, you get lost in the woods, and then in the editing process you get even more lost, and there was nothing better than coming back to a very concentrated dose of the reason we all got in the business in the first place, the stuff that inspired us when we were young. It was the same for me and all of the actors. Obviously, Much Ado, very different than the Avengers. Also very much the same in that all I'm doing is taking an extraordinary stable of actors. In the case of the Avengers, very famous ones. In the case of Much Ado, perhaps not as much, but people who I know can absolutely do what I need them to and who love what they're doing. A lot of training goes into being a great actor, and a lot of that is Shakespearean training, and so they have these muscles they don't get to flex very often in American television or wherever they're working. Someone like Tom Hiddleston, who I, worked with on Avengers, obviously is known for doing Shakespeare and went on to be Prince Hal right after that. But most of the people in Much Ado, it's a revelation to people that they've done a great deal of Shakespeare, and some of them it's a revelation that they haven't because they take to it so well. And I suppose at some point I have to shut up and play another song. Here's a song that was playing a great deal when I was filming Avengers and that we danced to incessantly when we wrapped Much Ado About Nothing. It's a little-known artist that I'm very proud to have discovered. This is Adele with Fire to the Rain. That was Adele. This is Joss Whedon, and you're listening to Radio 1.
My playlist
with Joss Whedon.
BBC Radio 1.
Some of you have been kind enough to text or tweet or send questions, and I will do my best to answer them or obfuscate wildly.
What was the hardest character death for you to write, and why?
Character deaths aren't hard to write. They're easy. They're the substance, or at least the culmination of any good tragedy. Everybody wants to write one, and every actor wants to play one.
From Golden Echoes, do you know why the film title was changed for the UK?
The Avengers had to be called Avengers Assemble because of The Avengers, the popular television show that I myself watched as a child. It was a legal issue.
From Gareth on Facebook, would you ever do a movie revisiting Buffy, or do you think it's all over now?
I'd say Buffy is what it should be, and I don't think reviving it would necessarily do it justice.
From Jason on Facebook, are you involved in Toy Story 4? ? Smiley face.
Dear Smiley Face, I have not been involved in any of the Toy Stories since the first one, which is very annoying to me because the two sequels are both so good.
From How You Doing on Twitter, oh my god, I'm doing an English paper on you! Smiley face with a capital D.
For the love of God, think of something better to write about. Smiley face.
From Alice on Twitter, What was your best contribution to the Avengers movie?
I feel my best contribution to the Avengers film was all those superheroes I made up myself.
From Fern is Green. If you could be an Avenger for one day, who would you be?
Well, obviously, if I could be an Avenger, I'd be Black Widow. And if I have to explain why, then you're very young.
From Alana is Me. After the success of the first movie, what's the pressure like trying to equal it with a sequel?
When you think about doing a sequel to a movie that's very successful, you can't try to top it at the box office. You can't try to make it bigger or more explodey or just do the same gags again. The only thing you can do, the only pressure there is to make a better film. Thank you for those questions. Good luck with your paper. And now back to some music. I have a very musical and talented family that I have worked with several times on certain projects. My brother Jed and his wife Marissa are capable of doing almost anything, and when we worked together on Dollhouse, there was a point where I said, I need an achingly beautiful ballad to end this with, and we can't afford it, so go write one. And they did. This is Remains by Jed Whedon and Marissa Tenteron.
My playlist
with Joss Whedon
on BBC Radio 1.
That was Remains, written for Dollhouse by Joss's brother Jed. It's my playlist. Joss Whedon is in charge, although I'm helping him out.
My playlist
with Joss Whedon.
BBC Radio 1.
So this is Phil from Dan and Phil, and fast forwarding from Toy Story in 1995 to Buffy the Vampire Slayer in 1997, Joss Whedon created a cult phenomenon and one of the greatest TV shows of all time. I'm actually rewatching Buffy at the moment, and it's so good. It also gave me nightmares as a kid. Does anyone remember the episode Hush, where the whole town was silent and these creepy gentleman creatures glided across the streets and ate people's hearts? That was brutal stuff for 6:45 in the evening. Anyway, one of the places Buffy hung out most was Sunnydale nightclub, The Bronze, which Joss used to showcase a lot of new LA bands, and also the characters danced along to a few classic 90s tracks. Here's a great example of that. It's Blink 182, All the Small Things, taken from Buffy the Vampire Slayer on Radio 1. That was Blink 182 with All the Small Things. It's my playlist with Joss Whedon, with occasional interruptions from me, Phil, from Dan and Phil. So Joss Whedon is a big fan of musicals. He actually wrote an entire musical episode of Buffy, which was amazing. So he promised us that he was going to play a track from one of his favourite musicals. So let's have a listen of what he chooses.
My playlist
with Joss Whedon
on BBC Radio 1.
This is Radio 1, and my playlist is on it. But I couldn't get through this without playing anything from Broadway. This is a song from a show called Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson, a very comical telling of the presidency of Andrew Jackson and part of how he took America from the Native Americans. And it is all very tongue-in-cheek until the very end of the show when Justin Levine comes on and sings this song written by Michael Friedman called Second Nature.
That was Second Nature from the musical Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson.
My playlist
with Joss Whedon
on BBC Radio 1.
BBC Radio 1.
This is Phil from Dan and Phil, and I'm here to talk a little bit more about Buffy, because it is my favourite thing in the world. Buffy ended in the 7th season in 2003 in an incredible battle in the Hellmouth, and after the credits rolled, everyone, including me, had that horrible moment where you feel like all your friends have disappeared, and the TV show's over and you don't know what to do. So a way I dealt with that angst was listening to this song, also released in 2003. Here is Linkin Park with Numb.
My playlist
with Joss Whedon
on BBC Radio 1.
Film scores have been a part of my life since my father, for some inexplicable reason, gave me the score to Jaws on a cassette tape as a Christmas present. And John Williams has, of course, been the soundtrack of my life since then. He wrote some fairly well-known scores back in the day, obviously, but it's his later work that has really touched me and kept me going, and I think he continues to grow as an artist in a way that few do. I particularly think of Memoirs of a Geisha, which is one of my all-time favorite scores, and the theme to Angela's Ashes. There are some scores that blend seamlessly and some that stand out because they are so remarkable. Once Upon a Time in the West obviously has one of the most lyrical and extraordinary scores. This is a movie where the hero is so badass, he plays his own harmonica theme.
My playlist.
With Joss Whedon.
BBC Radio 1.
This is Joss Whedon with my playlist tonight. I'm Phil from Dan and Phil, and as I'm a massive fan of his, I thought I'd take over this show a little bit as well. So, if you don't know about mine and Dan's show, it is a fully visualised request show, 7 till 9 on a Sunday on Radio 1, and you can send in your own music videos. So if you've ever made a music video to a song that you love, send it to Dan and Phil at bbc.co.uk, and we could play it on the show. And a favourite band on our show is actually Bastille, so here is Laura Palmer.
Thank you for putting up with me. I'm Joss Whedon. This has been my playlist.
My playlist.
With Joss Whedon.
BBC Radio 1.
Thank you, Joss Whedon, for taking over my playlist on Radio 1, and also thanks for having me, Phil, from Dan and Phil, having a little go as well. Now, Tom Odell is coming up next week at 9 o'clock on a Wednesday, so it feels right that we play one of his songs. So to sail us into the distance, here is Tom Odell.